Before we start the 16th chapter in the issues of Vils Chasodim, which the Chofetz Chaim speaks about, this is such an important point. And he explains that, and he quotes the Shaloh HaKodesh, who cites his father. He mentioned that the Shaloh, his name was Shlomo Levi Horowitz. He lived in the 1700s in Tveria. He was a great Kabbalist, Ashkenazic Jew. Originally lived in Europe, emigrated to Israel in the 1700s, and he was part of the Kabbalistic community in Tiberias. So he writes that although we can only do for ourselves as long as we're alive, but if a child does on behalf of his parent, regardless of how far gone the parent was, how disconnected the parent was, the child or a grandchild or a blood relative is able to bring merit to the person even after he passes away. Very important point. And he says, if a person himself during his lifetime bequeaths money to support Torah beyond his life, and continuously as a result of what he bequeathed, people are studying Torah, people are beneficiaries of Chesed, that Chesed is attributed to him because of his action that he had done during his lifetime. That's what he writes. So he gives good advice. If you set up a free loan society and you bequeath a certain amount of money, that money should be in the fund and continuously circulate and provide loans for Jews. And Jewish people are beneficiaries of your Chesed, even beyond your lifetime. But because that only exists because of the initiative you took during your lifetime, all that merit accrues to the person who left that money. If you left money to support a Torah institution, whether it's a kollel, the yeshiva, elementary school, and children or adults study Torah because of the money that he had left, it's like what we call an endowment. Lahavdil colleges have endowment funds. People give money and endows the university continue to exist. People, that's what they leave their money for. They endow. It's an endowment. So the whole concept exists in regard to mitzvahs. It's an endowment, even beyond the person's life, because he endowed that money. He bequeathed the money for that. Whatever is generated, whatever benefit people have, that accrues to the person who left that money. So he says, whatever a person doesn't have the means, and a third party does it on his behalf, a friend, or whoever it may be, doesn't make a difference. Even if it's a relative, even if the relative doesn't even have in mind to do it on behalf of the departed, but since he is a descendant of that person, automatically the antecedent who brought that family line into being, because that person can only do the good only because they are descendant of that person, automatically it accrues to a degree. But especially if the person has in mind, I'm doing it only because of that person, is even more so. But a third party is not related. He gives charity on behalf of a person who leaves this world. Since that person is the cause of that giving of that charity, the person is a beneficiary of that charity. Or any good deed. A person is moved. I mentioned at a funeral, we say eulogies. And a person is moved by understanding of the void that was left because the special person departed this world, and the person wants to pick up the slack and is touched to do a mitzvah better because of the person who died, because of the eulogy he heard about that person. That mitzvah that person does, who undertakes, accrues to the person who passed away. Anything that person is the cause of, the concept of causality, he's a beneficiary of that automatically. What about a person doesn't have much of a means? You know, in a study hall, what we call Beis Medrash, you have to have books to study, whether it's a Siddur, a Chumash, a Mishnah, a volume of the Talmud. And you write in the book that this book was donated to this location in memory of this person. And whoever studies this should have in mind to study in memory of that particular person. And you write it in the book. I'm quoting the Chofetz Chaim. So when that person studies Torah out of that book, and that book is enabling and facilitating the study of Torah, the Torah that person studies accrues to the person who had given that book. That's the value. When my father, Lovashon, passed away, it's going to be now 23 years ago, I distributed in Israel about 50 sets of Talmud throughout Israel. Different kollel. That means every kollel who studied and they used those volumes, that study of Torah accrued to my father, Olav HaShalom, because I knew the value of this. So anything we do in our lifetime, or even a descendant does on behalf of that person, it has tremendous, tremendous merit. That literally it's an eternal endowment. As long as those people study, that studying accrues to that person who provided the text, said a person should be able to study. It's like an easy one. It's not that difficult, not that complicated. I said something interesting. The Mishnah tells us in Pirkei Avos that even to the most minute mitzvah, whatever that may be, we don't even know what's minor, what's major. Schar b'al maleko. The value, the level of reward that you deserve, there's not enough time or capacity in this existence that you can be rewarded for that mitzvah. So if a person studies one word of Torah, even one word, we say Talmud Torah keneged kulam. One word of Torah is the equivalent of 613 mitzvahs. And if you study 10 words, and now we're studying an hour of Torah, how many words are we discussing during this hour? So if you do the math, we're talking about mega numbers. It's those numbers of words times 613. What is the merit of that? And whatever we study, our parents are beneficiaries of that, even if you don't have a mind your parent. Because you being the child of your parent, and you made a choice to study, and you could have only made that choice because your parent brought you into existence. Therefore, your parent, your mother and father are direct beneficiaries of whatever we do. So we're talking about continuously, wherever the soul is in the world to come, it continuously advances due to what the descendant, the child or the grandchild, or whoever that descendant may be doing the right thing in this world. That's the value. You know, my Rosh Hashanah once explained the Mishnah Pirkei Avos. It says that if a person would consider three things, he'll never come to sin. One of the three things is before who you will give a judgment and a computation. Din is the verdict, and cheshbon is the computation, which is the verdict is based upon. So the Vilna Gaon asks a question. There's a question of the Vilna Gaon. The order should have been lifmi ato osid litain cheshbon v'din. Before who will you give a computation, and based on that computation, that will be the verdict. But it doesn't say that. It says before who you will be judged, and then the computation. It seems to be out of order. So Merashiv Zechaninu of Rocha, blessed memory, said exactly what we're speaking about over here. Person passes away, so his life is evaluated based on what you've done in your lifetime. That's the verdict. What about during your lifetime? You did many things which have effects after you pass away. You influenced the person positively to do mitzvahs. Now, post death, that person continues to do mitzvahs. Those mitzvahs were not part of the original verdict because those mitzvahs weren't yet actualized. As a result of that, when the person passes away, there's a din, the verdict. He deserves a certain portion in the world to come. What about he has 1,000 people who he was a positive role model for them, and those people continuously doing the right thing? There's a continuous computation, even beyond the verdict. And based on that ongoing computation, the person's soul continually soars in the world to come. But that couldn't be part of the verdict because those mitzvahs, those good deeds weren't yet done. So that's what the Mishnah tells us. There's din, there's judgment, and there's cheshbon. After the person passes away, there's a verdict immediate. But then there's an ongoing computation based on what we did. So let's say you left money to support a kollel or a yeshiva, a Torah institution, or you left a shas, a set of Talmud that people should study from. And the shas has a lifespan of 50 years. People could study from those books before they wear out. So the person leaves it. He has merit for leaving the shas, the set of Talmud. Now, for the next 50 years, 7 days a week, many hours a day, they use that Shas. All that Torah study, that study due to the person providing the text, those mitzvahs accrue to the person who passed away. Therefore, that's din v'cheshbon. It's unbelievable. And I always say that you see that in Times Square, they have that number spinning, the national debt. What we're able to bring about, it spins faster than that national debt, but in the positive. The mitzvahs could accrue unbelievably. Could you imagine you have a school that has 1,000 children and you bequeath money for that, although your money doesn't underwrite the whole institution. But since you're part of the whole, God accredits you as if you underwrote that whole institution. It's a mission of Pirkei Avos. It says, if a person does something for the sake of God, although you have to come on to the merit of the community to succeed, Hashem gives you full credit for it. Why? Because you took the initiative, you did it l'shem shamayim, you did it for the sake of God. So if a person truly does something for the sake of Hashem, not because I want to have that, not necessarily that share in the world to come. I want to do the right thing even beyond my existence, when I'm no longer able to make choices. As a result of that, everything you do, although you're only a pittance of the totality, God gives you full credit as you did the whole thing. It's like an offer you can't turn down. It's a concept which is invaluable. Sometimes you're better off. When we're confronted with choices, it's not so simple to succeed. But if you put the choice out by multiple people make choices, studying Torah, they can do something good. You're in a better place there than even when you do your own thing, in terms of making continuous choices, which is not so simple. Okay, it's a joke, but it's the truth. Lawrence pays very high taxes. So it used to be called Far Rockaway, it's called West Lawrence. So they're able to raise the taxes. That's the reason why, Bob, he lives in, they don't call it the Hamptons, they call it something else. So the tax is a little bit lower where Bob lives. Okay. So there's a Jew, he's a very observant Jew. He's a man in his upper 70s. He already has great grandchildren who are observant. And the rabbi who has the yeshiva out there, very successful yeshiva, and he knows he's a Baal Tshuva from many years ago. So he said to him, how did you become a Baal Tshuva? He's more just not a Baal Tshuva, he's a devout Jew, learned, he raises children, sent them to the right Torah institutions, his grandchildren, great-grand, it's unbelievable. Who gave you such an appreciation for all this? How did you come here? That was the question this rabbi asked this person, who was a man who's up in his 70s, who's a Baal Tshuva from years ago. But if you look at him, you could never tell he was ever non-observant. He says, I'll tell you the story. In the 60s, I was a hippie. And I had a friend who wasn't even Jewish. And he says to him, today's a day Jews, they celebrate. It's called, they rejoice with their Torah. He says, what's the Torah? He didn't know what the Torah was. He didn't know what the day was. He says, in Philadelphia, there's a yeshiva, a school of higher learning. Why don't you go there? Find out for yourself. But he says, I give you good advice. Put on a skull cap. In those days, they called it a skull cap. People had skulls, right? Okay. And so he puts on a large white satin yarmulke, and he hears singing and dancing from the outside. He walks in. He never seen anything like that. People are holding Torah scrolls, dancing, rejoicing, true, pure joy. And he's like amazed. He's never seen anything. The man can't discern between an olive and a vase. Knows nothing. So he goes over to the person, one of the students who are dancing, they're all single boys. He says, what's this all about? He says, we're rejoicing the completion of the Torah. It's called Simchas Torah. He says, but what is it all about? He says, what it's about, what's mine is yours. He says, of course, are you Jewish? He says, yeah, I'm Jewish. He says, if that's the case, what we're rejoicing with is yours, is it's ours. Would you like to hold the scroll and dance with the scroll? He says, yes. Takes the scroll, dances with it. For 15 minutes, he's elated, walks out. He's like on cloud nine. And what he couldn't get out of his mind was, what's mine is yours. The student said to him, what's mine here, you have a devout student. This person doesn't even know what Judaism is about, but he said, what's mine is yours. So this guy, he has to find out what yours is. He started investigating, and from that, he became an observant Jew. 4 generations down the line, great-grandchildren, devout, learning everything. Okay? So this rabbi said to him, he said, do you remember the student who said to you, what's yours is mine? That's the question he asked him. He says, I have no idea. I don't know who it is. So he said, this rabbi said to him, did you realize, because of that comment that student said to you, and offered you the Torah and said, what's yours, what mine is yours, that created the momentum, the dynamic that you should be observant, your children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. All that happened accrues to that one student. The student is not even aware what he did. After 120 years, when that student comes to the world to come, and all of a sudden he has literally a mega account there. He doesn't even know where the mega account came from. So they go and they reveal to him, if you remember, going back 60 years ago, 70 years ago, you once made a comment to this person, what yours is mine, and as a result of that, you created this dynamic, and generations are observant, devout Jews. So the many things we do in our lives, we didn't even realize. One word, do we know how far that one word could affect a person and create literally an unbelievable effect, which is beyond their imagination. This is the example. So if a person has an opportunity to say a positive word to a fellow Jew, especially if he doesn't know much, to encourage him to do a little more, or even to investigate it, what's the value? Do you have any idea where that goes? You have no idea where it goes. You feel yourself, you're destitute, spiritually speaking. And all of a sudden a person passes away, he comes, he sees, he's in Forbes 500, he's number 3. Where did it come from? Because you never know, if you did something positive, you never know what could happen. What that brings about, always brings to mind, what's his name? Howard Hughes. I always tell over the story. Hagerstown, Maryland, that was the hub of trailways, Hagerstown, Maryland. And this ordinary guy got off the bus in Hagerstown, Maryland, and he meets a person who looked like a derelict. And he asked him, he says, and in the rest stop in Hagerstown, they had pay toilets. He needed a dime to go into the toilet, to open up the stall. So this derelict says to this person, hey, buddy, you have a dime? He says, yeah. He says, I want to use the pay toilet. It's the door's locked. He says, more than happy. So the derelict says to him, by the way, can I have your name and your address and your phone number? He says, sure. He didn't understand why. Gave it to him. Fast forward 15 years later, he gets called from the lawyer. Howard Hughes left him $10 million. You got it? This derelict, he didn't know he's Howard Hughes. So what did that dime bring about? Because he let him into the stall of the pay toilet. It generated $10 million. Lahavdil Elav Abdolos. We do something which we seem to be a pittance. It's less than a dime. It's a nuance. It's a good word. It's a smile. Do we know what that generates? You have no idea. The example is from the story I'm telling over. What's yours is mine. That's it. That brought about a mega, not to be fathomed what the value of that was. I'm too far gone. It's too late. It's never too late. Let's say a person was destitute his whole life, and he's just celebrated his 77th or 78th birthday. I say, I got a deal for you. You'll turn into a billionaire. Nancy says, what are you talking about? My whole life been destitute. One deal is going to bring that about. I said, what do you have to lose? Give me $1, you'll see. And sure enough, in the dollar, 3 weeks later, he's written up in all the financial magazines. Nobody's ever made so much money as this guy who was destitute his whole life. At the age of 77, 78. Give it a try. What do you have to lose? But I'm too far gone. You're never too far gone. As a Jew, you're never too far gone. As long as you're alive, you do something, you may think it's minuscule. You may think it has an infinitesimal value. Nothing. It's worthless. Don't underestimate what it is. Ever. You never know what that could bring back. There's always that ripple effect. You never know. Because the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, always whispers in the ears. What's its value? What's its worth? What's it? You know something? I don't know what it's worth. You know, I'm not a finance guy, but I know it's a good deed. It's a good deal. How does it work? I don't have to know how it works. I know it's a good deal. How do you know it's a good deal? Because God said it's a good deal. Finished. But do you understand God? So you say to the evil, do you understand God? You don't understand God, so I'm supposed to understand God. There's an expression in Yiddish, Dreh nicht der Kopf. You know, don't confuse me. I don't want to be confused. Don't be a Dreh cup. That's it. But the evil inclination is always throwing in that monkey wrench. You're about to do something, there's discouragement. Always puts a damper on it. You know something? Just keep the blinders on, just go straight. That's it. As little or as much as it is. We say, as much as do, as little as you do. You can only do your best. You mean well, you never know the value of that. Especially if your focus is with purity. I'm doing it for the right reason. I'm not doing it with an ulterior motive. But look, what's it worth? You're giving $1, the other man gives millions. If I couldn't do better than $1, the dollar's worth as much as the millions. That's the way God evaluates it. Person has a genius IQ. He can figure it out in a moment. This other person, he came about tshuva, he can't even read Hebrew. He struggles breaks his teeth on the words. But he's doing his best. You're doing your best. You're credited as much as the genius who goes through it like a blink of an eye. It doesn't make a difference. Gabriel Amos, Gabriel Amos, Larry. Gabriel Amos is Rabbi Pinto's brother-in-law. He's married to Rabbi Pinto's sister. So many years ago, the story goes back, it's almost 23 years ago, 22 and a half years ago. And the Sephardic Jews, in the month of Elul, they start saying slichos at the beginning of the month. Ashkenazic Jews, we begin saying slichos 4 days before Rosh Hashanah. We have 4 days, we speak 4 days before. Otherwise, a week before. But Sephardic Jews start at the beginning of Elul. When you start blowing shofar, they start saying, okay? Gabriel Amos, he came to study at the Yad Avram every day in the morning. But now Slichos comes. He has asked me a question. Is it better he should not say Slichos and study Torah to come to the class in the morning? Well, no. He should not come to the class and go say Slichos with the Svardim up in the 70s. There was a Moroccan minion. That was the question he asked me. So I said to him then, I think that since the day you study Torah, your day is a different day, forget about the slichos, you'll be like an Ashkenazic Jew. 1 second. Do you people see me? Hello?
We see you and you're recording.
Okay, because I don't see you. It just went blank, but okay, I'll tell a story. So what happened? He came. And in those years, he was working in Wall Street, in the Twin Towers. And he came to work that morning. And when he came to work, the Twin Towers didn't stand any longer. It already was destroyed. If he would have gone and said slichus with the Sephardim, which they do at pre-dawn, that means he would have finished the morning service early enough that he would have been to Twin Towers before the planes hit. You got it? So because I advised him, which I had no idea, that he should come study, that's why he wasn't in Twin Towers when they came down. That's one of the stories. So sometimes we do certain things that pay off. The dividends are so phenomenal, you realize what's the value of study of Torah. We say one word is the equivalent of 613. The Torah keeps the world afloat. We have no idea. We shouldn't underestimate anything. Anything we do, we never know the ripple effect. And therefore, as I say, it's never too late. You can be 77, 78 years old. Whatever you do, to be able to evaluate what it may be, it has infinite worth. Only God knows. But we know what God knows is something we can't fathom. And therefore, good advice, just follow good advice, which is what he says, just keep studying, regardless at what point you're in your life. Now the Chofetz Chaim writes, not only should a person have a free loan on a personal level, as little money as you have, you give small loans, you make it known in the community, person needs some help, there's money available. You may have $100, but in the olden days, $100, you lend the person a dollar had value. Today you have $100 or even $1,000. What could you do with borrowing $5, $10? Not much. But the different communities, the different needs. Okay, he's speaking about a communal free loan society. What is the value of having every community should have a free loan society? And you appoint people who are responsible and competent to run it. And you have certain bylaws that the free loan is actually overseen, whatever it is. Collateral, two guarantors, because the moment you compromise on the bylaws, just a question of time before that free loan, the money, the capital for that free loan is not going to exist. So you have to have people who are steadfast. They're not going to compromise on the bylaws. He gives an example. You have your private free loan. You do whatever you want. A rich man comes and says, I'd like to borrow. If you choose not to ask for collateral, that's your choice. But you realize even the rich man, he may not be able to pay in time or may not pay at all. He may have some kind of financial reversal, but that's your prerogative because that's your money. But when you're dealing with a communal free loan, regardless of who the person is, you cannot make any compromises. Everybody's bound to the bylaws of it. Rich man, Rockefeller wants to borrow money, he has to bring collateral. It has to be collateralized because you can't make exceptions. The moment you start making exceptions, the thing is going to have a short lifespan. This is what he says. But he says, what's the value of having a communal free loan, communal chesed? See, he says Sodom was destroyed because the Sodom community did not extend the hand to the poor. If they would have had the schus, the merit, that the community does chesed, that schus, that merit, as bad as they were, as evil as they were, would have protected them. It would have stayed the execution. There's no community that's perfect. He says, he gives an example. A poor man comes with collateral and he goes to private people to borrow money. Everybody says, I'm too busy now. I'm this, I'm that. I don't want to deal with your collateral out of this. And they turn the man down. But the man initially, he was counting that because he has the collateral and they put it together, he'd be able to come upon the funding, what he needs. And he's disappointed. Not is he disappointed, he's broken. And he cries out to God. And God hears his supplications. Where the people could have helped him, they did not help him. God forbid. This activates the attribute of justice on that community. So by having the free loan communal, where you're not dealing with individuals, you're going to a private party. He doesn't want to be bothered. He doesn't want this. I'm too busy right now. The Gemach, the free loan has its hours. It's open. You go there. It's a communal free loan. That's number one. So to avoid this type of claim against the community, you're avoiding that. Secondly, he says, is a principle, and it's learned from the laws of where the Torah tells us that if you go in my statutes and you follow my ways, it says 10 people will pursue 100, and 100 will pursue 2,000. So the question is, mathematically speaking, it should be the same ratio, yet the ratio is greater. Why? So Chazal tells you cannot compare when a handful of people do a mitzvah where you have a larger number doing a mitzvah. When a larger number does a mitzvah, it's a greater Kiddush Hashem. It's a greater sanctification of God's name. For instance, if you have a synagogue, we'll call it a shul, has 10 people praying there, and a synagogue has 100 people praying. And you could pray as well in either one, the 10 or the 100. Which is a better one to pray with? The 100. Why? Because there's a verse in Proverbs that says, Rov Am Hajas Melech. The larger the numbers of people, there's greater glory to the king. More people are actually representing God's glory. As a result of that, if you have multiple Jews wanting to do the will of God, and that's what the fund represents, that's a greater Kiddush Hashem, is a greater level of representation. So by pooling the money of the community, besides avoiding all the other issues that people will turn the man down, but in addition, it's the whole community is united to do the Chesed. And when a community is united and they're identifying with God, it activates another level of merit and creates another level of protection. Therefore, the Chafetz Chaim very much says, if it doesn't exist, that one person should try to initiate it, speak to people, they should pool the money, and what? And they should have this larger number. But you say, but I'm only giving, I have 1,000th of the capital is mine, doesn't make a difference. Since the fund wouldn't exist unless everybody contributes, everybody gets full credit as if they gave all the money to the fund. That's what it is, because every contribution allows the fund to function. Without it, it wouldn't function. So there are a number of reasons. Number one, if it's private, you may disappoint the person who truly needs it. Secondly, it's communal fund, so the community has the schus of doing chesed. Thirdly, although he gave a small amount, each contributed to that fund, he's accredited as if he gave all the money, because the fund wouldn't exist unless you have the communal participation of all the people in the fund. That's a Chafetz Chaim. That's why he encouraged that this Chever, he calls Chever Gemach, this group who create this free loan should be in every community in Europe, that it's there and available for any person who's in need, he can borrow from them. You imagine you have 10 hoop diamonds lying on the street, and a person never saw a diamond before, and he thinks it's a piece of glass, and just walks by and leaves it there. But if he would know the value and he'd pick it up, what he'd be able to do with the value of those diamonds, sell them, turn into cash. With that cash, how many people could he feed? How many people could he help? But because he's ignorant, he thinks it's like a stone on the ground. Literally every moment of our lives, with minimal effort, you're able to do unbelievable things. To get a piece of, they used to call a piece of the rock. Right? Bob knows he was sold insurance or whatever he sold over there. Right? Premiums. It's unbelievable. But because people are so ignorant, and even the learned people were so out of touch, we minimize the value of so many things. Person, says, why don't you study? I only have 10 minutes. Might as well kill the time. If we're saying every word you study during that 10-minute period has infinite value, and you could study those 10 minutes, let's say 500 words, what's the value of that Torah study of 500 words? If somebody has to do him a favor, to pick up the phone because the person needs a favor, to get him a job or whatever it is, takes you a minute. I'm too busy right now. What are you busy with? People, they drive beyond the speed limit. They'll speed 85 miles an hour, take a chance they're going to get a ticket, they're going to have points on their license. They finally arrive at the destination. And what do you do there? Sit around and just shoot the breeze. Could you imagine? Going 85, you took a chance, you may be in an accident. You may get points on your license. You're burning gas at a level when you're paying $4 a gallon, you're burning it, your gas mileage is minimized. But I got to get there. What do you have to get there? What are you going to do there? You're going to close a deal? What is it all about? That's how we live our life so irresponsibly without really thinking of the end game. What's the end game? But there's so many things because we're not sensitized to what we should do, knowledge-wise, or just in touch to focus. We pass opportunities which have infinite value. That's just a reality, the way we live our lives. And that's why you need continuously refocusing. Yeah, always readjustment. No, you have a piano. You have to retune it every once in a while because it doesn't, or you have a string instrument. You always have to make sure those strings are taut. Otherwise, the sound is not a right sound. It's off. The same thing, a human being has to be continuously refocused. We always get off a little bit, get distracted. But that distraction, what is the value? Could you imagine driving, flying a F-89 doesn't exist. You break the sound barrier and you get distracted. You know where you end up? You have to, at best, you're lucky if you could eject. Otherwise, it's over. So if life is distractions, how much do we have to be focused not to be distracted or to try to minimize distraction? But that's the reality. We're talking about now. What we're able to do in our lifetime for after our lifetime. What we're able to do with a moment to be a role model for another person, a word of encouragement, a smile, or for a person, a safer. I'll tell you a story. Many years ago, there was a shamus at Fifth Avenue Synagogue. I mentioned his name is David Finkelstein. And there was a person, he grew up as a farm boy in Binghamton, New York. His name was Marty Silverman. Marty Silverman. He knew nothing about Yiddishkeit, very little, but he knew that when his father passed away, and then he was a man in his 60s, he had to say Kaddish for a year. The man didn't know how to daven, didn't know how to say Kaddish. He comes to Fifth Avenue Synagogue, and David Finkelstein didn't know who he was. He dressed like an ordinary guy, ordinary person, and he shows him, and he helps him say the Kaddish, and he befriended him. And he took a liking to David Finkelstein, this Marty Silverman. He didn't realize Marty Silverman, this is in the early 70s or mid 70s, he gave the largest cash donation in UJA, in the history of UJA. He wrote a $10 million check. That's who he was, okay? In a very special relationship. And I come then, in 1983, 84, I come to Fifth Avenue Synagogue, and I have a special relationship with David Finkelstein. And we had our Beis Medrash on 61st between Madison and 5th, Madison and Park. And one day, and I met, Marty knew who he was, but we didn't know one another. And I have a knock on the door. Who is it? David Finkelstein and Marty Silverman. And David Finkelstein says, you know, Marty would like to speak to you. I'll leave you by yourselves. You know, everything is like preordained. In those years, I used to buy the New York Times once a week. Wednesday edition I bought once a week. And in the science section of that, there was an article that the chief rabbinate of Israel and the Supreme Court had a disagreement what the law should be. Chief rabbinate said this way. Said the Supreme Court said differently. So you had two bodies, and this chief rabbinate was a body of the government. No different, okay? And that's all I read. Maybe a few days earlier, Marty Silverman comes to me, and he's a very wealthy man. And there was a yeshiva in Passaic, which needed a tremendous amount of money to launch it. It existed, but to really expand it. So Marty Silverman sits down opposite me, and he says to me, I want to ask you a question. I visited this yeshiva in Passaic. It's a very fine boys, very fine yeshiva, but I want to ask you a question. And based on your answer, that will determine whether I will help them financially or not help them financially. Listen to the story. I said, okay, what's the question? Is the yeshiva Passaic, New Jersey, are they for the state of Israel, against the state of Israel? If they're for the state of Israel, I will help them very, very nicely financially. And if they're not, it's a great, fine boys, but I will not help them. So based on your answer, that will determine whether I help them or I don't help them. That's what he asked me. Now, if you're that kind of Jew, do you agree with all the policies of the state of Israel? Definitely not. They do many things which are contrary to Torah law. So I said to him like this, I said, I want to ask you a question. What is the meaning for the state or against the state? What is the meaning of that? Let's try to understand what those words mean. Doesn't mean to say that they don't agree with all the policy of the state of Israel. Do they? The answer is no. Are they for the state if there's any financial need? Would they give money to feed the people, to protect the people? The answer is yes. Would they pray for them, their welfare? The answer is yes. He says, I'll give you an example. You have two bodies of the state of Israel, the Israeli rabbinate, and you have the Supreme Court. They're both bodies for the state of Israel, but they don't agree. Does that mean to say if the chief rabbinate doesn't agree with the Supreme Court, they're against the state? They're not against the state. They're both bodies of the state of Israel. The same thing here. The Passaic Yeshiva, although they don't agree with all the policies of the state of it, that doesn't mean they're against the state. It's no different than the chief rabbinate not being in agreement with the Supreme Court. This is what I said to him. So if you would ask me, I would say that for the state of Israel. He thanked me and he left. I never knew what happened. Yeah? Didn't know what happened. Fast forward 4 years later, I'm sitting in the dermatologist office in Muncie. His name is Dr. Joseph Sutton. He's a dermatologist. And who's in the office? The Rosh Yeshiva of this Yeshiva Passaic. And the dermatologist, who's an observant Jew, introduces me to this rabbi. And he says to me, so I say to him, whatever happened with Marty Silverman? That's what I said to him. He says, how do you know Marty Silverman? He asked me. So I tell him the story. So I said to him, did he help you? He says, he helped us. I said, what did he do for you? I didn't know what happened. He says, he gave us a $5 million free loan with no due date to pay whenever we have the money, we could pay the loan. 5 years. We still don't have the money, but he's not pressuring us for the money. That's what he did for us. I had no idea. I said, by the way, the reason why you got that money is because of my conversation with him. Because if you would have been against the state, you wouldn't have gotten that loan. I had no idea what it was. So did I know what the ramification of that conversation would be? What he would give, what he wouldn't give, who knows? But doing something, so I merited, I was privileged that they received a $5 million interest-free loan because I read the article in the New York Times about the disagreement between the chief rabbinate and the Supreme Court, and I made that comparison. Therefore, that was the clincher that he gave the money. You hear what's going on over here? This is like picking up Hope diamonds in the street. You just got to pick it up and look what you have. You have infinite value. But that's what life's all about. Don't underestimate anything. There's nothing which is considered not important. You never know what it could generate. And we say have the principle of mitzvah es mitzvah. When you do one good deed, it brings other greater good deeds. It's a phenomenal investment. There's always a return. Return not only in reward in the world to come, other opportunities. If Hashem sees you value his opportunity, gives you more opportunities. You bring a guy business deals. Every great deal he turns down. What, he's going to waste his time bringing you deals? You turn down every single deal. But if you accept the deal and you do the deal, he'll bring you more good deals. That's the way it works. So these words are words of encouragement for every person on this Zoom right now. Regardless of what you haven't done until now, do it, because what you do, it has infinite value. Don't see it as a stone on the ground. See it as the Hope Diamond. And it's beyond the Hope Diamond. And that's exactly what we're speaking about over here. The merit of being part of the whole, of something special, although you couldn't do it yourself, but that you're part of the whole, and the whole wouldn't exist only because you are part of it, then you get credit as if you did the whole thing.